Welcome back to the MOOC course titled Qualitative Research Methods. My name is Aradhana Malik and I am helping you with this course. And we've been talking about different ways of collecting and analyzing qualitative data. Now what we will talk about in this class today is we will summarize whatever we have done till now very briefly, and we will move on to some more ways of collecting and analyzing textual data, which we briefly mentioned in the last class. So we will, the topic of today's class is data management and analysis methods, and this will carry our conversation forward. Okay, and this is from a paper by Ryan and Bernard in the Handbook of Qualitative Research Methods, the book that we've been referring to right from the beginning. Okay, so then in this paper the authors discuss two traditions regarding the analysis of qualitative data, and they say that qualitative data is analyzed in primarily two ways. One is the linguistic tradition, in which the text is treated as the object of analysis. For example, the conversation, we have conversation analysis, we've talked about discourse analysis, narrative analysis, etc. So we've already discussed this as to how the text or the actual meat of a conversation is treated like the object of analysis. Even in discourse analysis, the meat of the conversation, the meat of the interactions recorded between or the interactions between two or more people that are recorded is taken, these interactions are taken, and then they are analyzed to see how they represent the social situation that they are coming from. The second tradition here that we'll talk about is the sociological tradition, where the text is treated as a window into human experience. So this is something that we briefly mentioned in parts over time, but we've not really discussed this, and we are going to discuss this in much greater detail now. We've already discussed the linguistic tradition, so we will not discuss that anymore. Okay, now as far as sociological tradition is concerned, we are going to discuss how texts are analyzed. There are two types of texts in the sociological tradition. The first type is words or phrases generated by techniques for systematic elicitation. Words or phrases that are generated as a result of forcibly, elicitation means we are stimulating the situation to generate words or phrases, to generate representations of itself. So they are generated by techniques for systematic elicitation. So techniques that are used to systematically stimulate the generation of words and phrases. For example, interviews, closed-ended interviews. We ask a question and we know the realm in which the answer will come. Okay. The other type of text here is the free-flowing texts, such as narratives, discourse, and responses to open-ended interview questions, where we don't know what we'll get. So there are two types of texts. One is expected category of texts. The other is this unexpected ocean or unexpected wealth of text that comes to us in the form of narrative, in the form of responses to open-ended questions like what did you do, why did you do it, how did you do it. Okay. Or discourses, the conversations rooted in a social situation that are influenced by and in turn influence the environment that they occur in, so they cannot be predicted. Okay. Collecting and analyzing words or phrases. How do we collect and analyze words or phrases? Techniques for systematic elicitation involve, the aim of these techniques is to identify lists of items that belong in a cultural domain and to assess the relationships among these items. So we bring out or we generate lists of items, lists of concepts that belong in a cultural domain, that belong together, and to assess the relationships between these items. Now, cultural domains comprise lists of words in a language that somehow belong together. They are connected to each other by way of the social milieu that they are a part of. The types of techniques, or there are three broad categories of techniques that we use here. One is called free lists, the other is paired comparisons, pile sorts, and triad tests, and the third one is frame substitution. We'll discuss each of these in detail now. Free lists are particularly useful for identifying the items in a cultural domain, and they consist of short, open-ended questions resulting in lists of concepts and ideas associated with concepts. For example, what do you know about life at IIT Kharagpur? What do you know about weather in West Bengal? What do you know about the food habits of Indian students living abroad? What do you know about travel in New Delhi? Okay, so something like that. So what do you know about, or what did you do on this trip? So there are open-ended questions. What do you know about is, I mean, it can be anything. We don't have categories in mind. So these are short questions that result in long lists that can be even remotely associated with the concept under study. Interpreters interpret the frequency of mention and the order in which items are mentioned in the lists as indicators of items' salience, the salience of items, the importance of items, the co-occurrence of items across lists, and the proximity with which items appear in lists may be used as measures of similarity among items. So these are free lists, and the number of times words come together, the number of times they are generated, the proximity that they are generated to, the way they are generated in relation to other words, their proximity with other words within the same category, and the frequency of these similarities and proximities will give us some idea of the kind of context that we are talking about. So this is how free lists are used. Okay. The next technique that we'll talk about is called paired comparisons, pile sorts, and triad tests. Now I've put all three on one slide, and I'm sorry for the clutter, but it's helpful if you see all three together. Paired comparison is a method used to generate the relative importance of a number of options. For example, and again I've taken the example from the book itself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how similar are lemons and watermelons with regard to sweetness? So you grade them. Then the second question you'll ask is, which is sweeter, watermelons or lemons? The first question produces a set of fruit by fruit matrices, and the second question produces for each respondent a perfect rank ordering of the set of fruit. So which is sweeter, which is next, etc. And how do they relate to each other? This technique is called a paired comparison technique. The next technique is the pile sort technique, in which the researcher asks each respondent to sort a set of cards or objects into piles. Item similarity is the number of times each pair of items is placed in the same file. So and again, these cards are made very carefully, and then we sort them out into, we ask the respondent to sort them into different piles. So this is another technique. The third technique here is the triad test, in which the researcher presents sets of 3 items and asks each respondent either to choose the 2 most similar items or to pick the item that is most different. And the similarity among pairs of items is the number of times people choose to keep pairs of items together. So you give them 3 things and you say which 2 seem most similar to each other, or which one of these is different, and the number of times people put items that they feel are similar together in the same pile is called the triad test, and that gives us some idea of the way people categorize the concepts that they are faced with. Okay. Frame substitution is another technique in which the researcher asks the respondent to link each item in a list of items with a list of attributes. So there is cross connections. You find out which item is linked to which attribute. You give people a list of items on one side and a list of attributes on the other, and these two are connected. Okay. Now we come to the techniques for analyzing data about cultural domains. We talked about cultural domains. So we use some techniques for analyzing data about cultural domains. These three techniques that we will discuss now are called componential analysis, taxonomies, and mental maps. Componential analysis produces formal models of the elements in a cultural domain. We'll talk more about this in a minute. Taxonomies display hierarchical associations among the elements in a domain. So you categorize things and then you organize them, arrange them in a hierarchical manner. And mental maps display fuzzy constructs and dimensions. Componential analysis is a formal qualitative technique for studying the content of meaning, and it's based on the principle of distinctive features. Any two items can be distinguished by some minimal set, that is 2 to the power n of binary features, that is the features either occur or do not occur. So it takes 2 features to distinguish 4 items, 3 features, so the n represents the number of features, 3 features to distinguish 8 items, and so on. And the trick is to identify the smallest set of features that best describes the domain of interest, and the output is models based on logical relationships among features. That is called componential analysis. The next technique that we will talk about is taxonomies. Taxonomy refers to the classification of ideas and concepts and the allocation of a name to the specific category that represents the specific characteristic of that category and the hierarchical placement of items in different categories in relationship to each other, the categories that represent a concept in relationship to each other. Let me show you a pictorial representation of what a taxonomy looks like. Let me just copy this and I'll just take you to a website. This is a very, very nice representation of what a taxonomy looks like. So this is a taxonomy of philanthropy that I found on the internet. Now this, I'll just show you, this is very beautiful, it's very nice, it looks like a tree, if you can see. So as you can see, this is the base of the tree, the root says promoting philanthropy, and over here we have technical assistance. You can see on the left side it says technical assistance. Then we have charitable giving. So the concept that we are talking about is promoting philanthropy. Here, how do we promote philanthropy? By giving people technical assistance. We also promote philanthropy by charitable giving. Philanthropy is rooted in community foundations, and here if we see, this is donor education. So these are the 3 ways in which we promote philanthropy. Now when we talk about charitable giving, then we go up different categories in which people give. One is nature, the other is culture, and the third is people or human resource. When we talk about nature, then there are further classifications here: plants, animals, and environment. Now each of these is divided into various things. So the environment is divided into wild and artificial. The wild environment is further divided into land, water, air. The artificial environment is further divided into land, water, air, and so on. Similarly, culture, arts, education. So these are the 2 broad divisions that this particular website has come out is talking about, and they are talking about specifically with regard to charitable giving. So, and promoting philanthropy. So they say that when we talk about culture, we promote philanthropy through 2 broad ways, and that is arts and education. And in arts we have performing arts and we have material arts, and then in performing arts we have multimedia, we have theatre, we have dance, we have music. So then we have the multimedia is again an artificial form of art. Theatre, dance, music involve human beings. Similarly, material arts involve here, there are so many different categories here: general, mixed media, painting, architecture, sculpture, literary, etc., etc. So all of these things are given here. So this is called a taxonomy. We come up with categories, and these categories are then organized in the form of a hierarchy. It's a very beautiful way of doing it. Okay. Now, we also have something called as folk taxonomies. Folk taxonomies refer to taxonomies regarding or taxonomies related to folk life or rooted in the folk environment. The problem with these taxonomies is that there is high inter-informant variation. That is, different people may use different words to refer to the same category of things. When we talk about human beings, when we talk about the natural world, when we talk about the social environment, we are talking about something very, very dynamic, very, very complex. So, it is not always possible, it's rarely possible. Let me take the other side. It is rarely possible to classify something totally into or bound something totally by a set of definitions and parameters. It is not possible to restrict the categorization of one concept to one category. With the result, overlapping occurs, and we are using language. After all, we are using language to describe whatever it is that we want to talk about, and language then limits us in terms of what we can describe and how we categorize things. So many times how we define a particular construct or concept then may fall into another category also. Different people are going to refer to the same concept, the same experience in different ways, especially in folk life, where the language is limited, where the exposure is limited, and where unless the researcher understands folk life, the way the researcher interprets the situation is going to be very, very different. So any unfamiliar, you will say it can apply to any unfamiliar situation, fair enough, but when we talk about folk life, we depend on the information we receive from our respondents, and that will vary. So there is high inter-informant variation, and different people are likely to use different words to refer to the same category of things and to the way these categories of things are arranged in the hierarchy. So taxonomy essentially involves hierarchical arrangement of these categories. Okay. We use overlapping cluster analysis, which identifies groups of items where a single item may appear in multiple groups, and then we use this cluster analysis to analyze items that appear in more than one group. We analyze items that appear in more than one group differently. So that is all about taxonomies. Next technique that we are going to talk about is mental maps. Mental maps are visual displays of the similarities among items, whether or not those items are organized hierarchically. For example, I'll show you something very nice here. This is something that relates to what you're doing as students. So we have a mental map that is given here. Qualitative strategies in educational research. So this is one mental map. This is the other one. The research methods mental map. This is simpler. I'll just increase the size of the page. Yeah. Okay, so this is an example of what a mental map looks like. We come up with the ideas with the concepts that we can think of, and we put them on a piece of paper, and then we see how they may be connected to each other. And these categories or these different concepts that are related may be mobile. We can take them and we can arrange them according to the way our understanding develops as we generate ideas. So this is a mental map. Okay, this is another technique. So there are some more that you can go through at your own convenience. You may need to create a login and password for this site, but I found this quite useful. Okay, now we'll come to methods for analyzing free flowing text. Various types of analyses that are conducted. The first one is, there are two categories. First is text is segmented into its most basic meaningful components, that is words, and the second method is meanings are found in large blocks of text, which means the text has to be coded. And we'll do the coding in the next class, but in this class we will discuss the first set of texts and first set of techniques. Okay, keywords in context. Researchers create keywords in context, KWIC lists, by finding all the places in a text where a particular word or phrase appears and printing it out in the context of some number or word before and after it. The output here is called concordance, and this was historically carried out on religious texts, and I found a very nice example of concordance on the Holy Bible. I'll just show it to you. So this is what the output looks like. Okay, Bible concordance. It's all in blue. That's a big problem. The Holy Bible concordance, and they have come up with these words that appear in context. Here, the following 66 words of frequent occurrence and their capitalized occurrences have been eliminated to keep the size of the concordance manageable. So these words have been put in an alphabetical order, and when you click on one, so the references come up with it, or the context is highlighted with the word. Okay, so this is called a concordance. Here, Aaron to Abimelech. I'm sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. So when we say Aaron, all of these words that come before and after it come along with it, and the context is also mentioned here. Okay, if you see a full screen of what you are seeing, you will realize what I'm talking about. You have the website address, you can copy it and see this for yourself. This is called a concordance. All right. And the most common abbreviation for this type of technique is KWIC, keywords in context. The next technique is word counts, and it's simply a physical counting of words that appear in a particular text, the number of times the same word appears in a particular text. It's useful for discovering patterns of ideas in any body of text, and it can help researchers to discover themes in text because you know how many times that word appears. Now, one thing that one needs to be cautious of here is that this kind of analysis considers neither the contexts in which the words occur, not whether the words are used negatively or positively, but distillations like these can help researchers to identify important constructs and can provide data for systematic comparison across groups. The context is not taken into account, the usage is not taken into account, whether the word is used positively or negatively is not taken into account. All that is taken into account is how many times the word appears within that text, and that gives us an idea of the themes emerging in relation to these words. Now, one thing that every researcher must be careful of is choosing the words that one wants to count. So we need to pick the right markers of that text. After all, why are we looking for these words? These words will give us an idea of what the text is all about. So the words that appear most commonly, for example, if you say the word the, THE, doesn't make sense. But more significant matters may be useful. Okay, so or the word traveled, if it's something, a spiritual text, or if it's a philosophical text, or if it's a text documenting say research in tribal areas, the word traveled may not be as important as the word culture or living or family. Maybe the word family would be more important, family or field or fruit may be more important when we are doing research in tribal areas. So let's see how many times the word family occurs in this narrative, and then we get an idea of why this word occurs. And of course, you know, it's an iterative process. We do it, we go back to the text, and then we do it and we go back to the text, but some themes emerge. structural analysis and semantic networks. This technique examines the properties that emerge from relations among things. Co-occurrence matrices involve co-word, co-link, co-citation, etc. And semantics is the study of meanings. Semantic networks demonstrate networks of meanings. For example, thesaurus.com. These are all public websites. Now, thesaurus.com, so this particular website gives you a network of meanings, and visual thesaurus is another one. Maybe I'm doing this wrong. In any case, I'll put up a link to this. Okay, so there is something called as a visual thesaurus, and it actually shows you how these words are connected. So these networks demonstrate networks of meanings, and these networks can be used to see how different meanings of different words relate to each other. The last topic in today's lecture is cognitive maps. This is another technique, and in this, cognitive maps are special types of mental maps in which the way it's a visual representation of the way we process information in the world around us and the way we make sense of our words. And the premise here is that if cognitive models or schemata exist, they are expressed in the texts of people's speech and can be represented as networks of concepts. They are rooted in Kelly's personal construct theory, so which says that in order to make sense of the world around us, we develop our own categories and classifications. And these are special types of mental maps that show, that demonstrate visually what, how our thinking process evolves in relation to a particular concept or environment or phenomenon, etc. So this is all we have time for in this lecture. We will discuss some more around along the lines of we'll talk about coding, we'll talk about analyzing chunks of textual information in the next class. Thank you very much for listening.